let's imagine that you were, oh, and it's not that far-fetched of a scenario, that you were appointed to something like a review board or a decision-making body that did this on behalf of the president in cooperation with Congress. Imagine there's a president who is in a situation 5 years from now, 2 years from now, where they have to do something. What do you think should be done?
I don't.
I'm asking you an impossible question, but
right. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to it. Well, here's the other angle to this too, and I think most people just don't pay attention to this. There are two sides of this, right? There's the NHI side, right? Something's driving these UAP, right? Something is doing that. There's got to be some type of intelligence there. So why isn't that intelligence basically announcing itself? What's its problem? I mean, what are the reasons they're not landing on the White House lawn, or they're not basically going to the Seoul Foundation one day and saying, "Hey, look, we're going to do a presentation, let you know who we are." They do everything in their power not to say anything. They do everything in their power to confuse us, to basically taunt us. Look at the Nimitz. I mean, flying around F-18s like that, that's dangerous business. But these craft obviously didn't think it was dangerous business. I don't know whether they're toying with you or not. I mean, the way they approach contactees, this is not what you would call a friendly gestures. I mean, they're almost like they're meant to be disruptive. I get that. And they're meant to be initiatory, maybe. Okay. But they're not going out of their way to say hello or to introduce themselves to your mother, right? So I sort of lay the blame on them too. And there's also the possibility that they control disclosure anyway. If they have the power that we basically think they have, and they're able to do this kind of stuff, they haven't come down and said, let me give you the secret to, time, space, where we can bend time, space and create, ways for you to travel across the universe, without, going faster than the speed of light or whatever the story. Let's explain quantum mechanics to you. Let's explain all this kind of stuff. Let's cure cancer. They're not doing any of that. Not doing any of that at all. So you look at that and you have to be, I think, pragmatic. If they're not doing that, if they're not helping, and the only messages they seem to get us are environmental is the big one, and they seem to be interested in reproduction for some reason. I mean, well, okay, everybody gets the environmental side of it, and the reproduction side is a whole different ballgame. But they're not explaining themselves very well to us either. So we're in a sort of a pickle with that too.
Okay, and so
getting excited with this, Peter.
I see you getting excited.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm gonna say for a broader audience that's going to catch this in a recording later that these are the kinds of questions we have to start to ask ourselves and ask in conversation about UAP, because it's we're at a stage where you have growing public awareness that the objects are real, but the selves or the subjects that at least design them and probably operate them, that's still a kind of third rail topic. And yet you have to ask yourself those questions, the kinds of questions you're asking right now, or else you're not really talking about the substance of the thing. We're not just talking about technology here, whatever our explanation is of it. But so all that said, I mean, look, I think this is an opportunity to think about what's really at stake in disclosure, which is ultimately this is something that concerns humankind, not just U.S. citizens and residents and the U.S. government. And, what do you think was done in the past by the United States to reach out to allies about this? And was there even some, there are often rumors and speculation about cooperation with adversaries around this?
Based on my experience, I could not imagine that the U.S. is not involved in some way with at least Five Eyes, right? And to some level. Now, I'll tell you that, every intelligence service or every country with an intelligence service, particularly if you let's use Five Eyes as an example. I mean, information is always shared. You share more information maybe with one intelligence organization than another one, but generally speaking, it's pretty much on an even keel. But you don't share everything. You just don't. You may tell them that we've created a particular weapon system that can do X, Y, and Z, but we're not going to give them, any more detail on that so they can go out and build it themselves. I mean, this goes back to the concept that, we have allies, but not necessarily friends. So you view your allies as allies, but not necessarily your friends. I mean, there are numerous instances of allies, either shortchanging us or us shortchanging them on some particular matters. So, but yes, the answer is I'd be very, very surprised if we have not engaged with them in some form or fashion. As with our adversaries, not too sure about that. We know from, when the Soviet Union collapsed, in 1991. We know that, there's some people that went over there and found the UAP program. And we know that, Russian military officers basically admitted it as much. And I guess I call it the Thread 3 program. I think George Knapp knew a lot about that. And I got some of the documents and looked very closely at some of the institutes that were doing the research. And it fits right in with what the institutes would be if you were going to be looking in this particular topic. And some of them were in closed cities, what they used to call Soviet closed cities. I think probably one or two still exist, but not very many closed cities exist anymore. So the answer is, I'm sure we're sharing. Okay. Not everything. No. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's an intriguing statement about the closed cities, and okay. So there is, some kind of intelligence sharing with with allies, but I mean, we still have to ask ourselves, we weren't the people that were likely to be managing this for the U.S. government in the 50s and 60s into the 70s. Some of these were extremely clever and cunning people. I mean, you can imagine that, a Henry Kissinger type, certainly an Alan Dulles type, these people would have been brought in because they were, you wanted your best, from a defense and intelligence perspective, you wanted the best people. You wanted the people who were in leadership positions, and you would want a kind of, brilliant intellectual or scientific type. We know that Manhattan Project people were probably put on technology. They would have thought, I think, that it would have been important to have some kind of international effort on this, both out of self-interest, but also they would have recognized the problem, which is that if you don't understand what this is, you probably need to be thinking in a very global way about how to deal with it. So,
yeah, no, not great. I think, we don't know what we're in their minds, but they're no different, than we are today. If you wanted to talk to a Greek philosopher today about philosophy, you can have a wonderful conversation. But if you wanted to talk to, a natural scientist from the 15th century with a plasma physicist today, it's going to be a whole different conversation, right? So the humanities, I think, and philosophy in the classics translate, over the centuries, but technology certainly doesn't. And I think as we progressed with technology, and we're getting more and more, we're getting better at understanding things. I think we'll probably see some. I would hope some advancement in understanding this, at least at a certain level. It may make people feel better about it. The only good thing about disclosure, the best argument I can make for it is I don't think anything, outside of possibly scaring people, is the fact that they're not going to come here and they're not going to wipe out the planet. That's clearly not their goal. They've been here for 2,000 years. If they wanted to do that, they would have done that, or in some form or fashion have done that. We can't be sure, but it's none of the instances I've seen, or if you look at the whole history of it, the movement, it doesn't present itself as a natural threat. I think the biggest threat is, like Lou pointed out, to our military, in the sense that, they're flying around when we're doing our exercises. That's not healthy. And that would be nice to tell them to go away. Now, they know they're doing that too. What the hell were they doing with the Nimitz flying around like that? Seriously, you have to ask yourself the question. They got to know that they're messing with us, right? So, and the new stuff that came up, I guess Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp put that new video out that looks like the Tic Tac. Once again, they're showing up and they're not announcing themselves. They're just showing themselves, and you don't know what the heck it is. It's just they're saying we can do X, we can do Y, but don't forget the capabilities. They're showing is just a very superficial view of it. And of course, we have no idea of the intent either. We have a tendency to look at things anthropomorphically, right? From this human viewpoint, and we try to assign things to UAP and the phenomenon in the hopes that we can better understand it. But, and I think that's the only way we can do it, but we have to be careful when we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you pointed out, I think, which is an important point that people often forget, which is there is communication in any kind of UAP interaction. And some of it might just be de facto and effective, but some of it's intentional. And yet it's so oblique, it's so indirect that we don't understand it. Now, there may be people who study it and, in classified environments who may have a sense of what some of this stuff means. But, generally unless you were doing very systematic analysis, even a researcher can't piece it together because it would, you'd have to know who the recipient was. And we don't know that most of the time. We do have experiencers who receive messages where they seem pretty sure. But again, that's always going to be the interpretation is going to lie with the person who's received it.